Will Rasmus Andersson be the difference maker to help the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup? What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. On today's show, Vegas added Rasmus Andersson. Is he good enough to put them over the top? Was it the right move for the Golden Knights? Plus, was Fernando Mendoza disappointing in Indiana's national title game? How do you feel about him as the number one pick for the Raiders? Big shout out to Battle Blast Las Vegas for sponsoring today's show. Go find Battle Blast Las Vegas and play some laser tag. Here we go. Rasmus Andersson traded to the Golden Knights over the weekend. And the biggest takeaway from this, the number one thing here, is that the Golden Knights have a better chance to win the Stanley Cup now than they did over the weekend. They gave up Zach Whitecloud in this trade, plus a first-round pick and a second-round pick, and a prospect to get Andersson, basically swapping Whitecloud for Andersson on the current roster, right? They obviously gave up more than Whitecloud, but nothing else in the trade was going to help them win the Stanley Cup this season. So they upgraded from Zach Whitecloud to Rasmus Andersson. That makes them better. That makes them more likely to win the Stanley Cup. And there are a few things about this trade that I really like. The first one is the ability to put a good puck-moving or somewhat offensive-minded, however you want to phrase that, defenseman on all three pairs, right? When the Golden Knights are healthy, they'll be able to go Shea Theodore, Noah Hannafin, and Rasmus Andersson on three different pairs. That's something they did in the past, and it's not something we've seen from this team this year. The depth hasn't been as good for the Golden Knights across the board, but the third pair has been not great this year for Vegas, especially when there's been injuries. And now you'll be able to put three different really good puck-moving defensemen on all three of your pairs. And I think that's a big reason or a big factor the Golden Knights could win the Stanley Cup, could be better than what we've seen so far this season, is he helps improve sort of equaling out those defensive pairs, not being top-heavy. However, and this is especially important in a playoff series because that's probably when we'll see it, the Golden Knights can also load up their top four defensemen, right? When healthy, assuming that happens, might be foolish to assume that happens, but when healthy, the Golden Knights can put Theodore and McNabb together, and they can put Hannafin and Andersson together as the second pair. In a playoff series, maybe ignore the third pair a little bit. I don't think that's the smartest way to do it, but we'll probably see Cassidy do that at some point in a playoff series. You can do that as well. So there's some flexibility to either go the more depth route or go, hey, let's load up our top two pairs and give them all of the minutes. And again, we'll probably see both of those options in the playoffs for Vegas, but I like the ability for Vegas to do both of those things by going out and getting Rasmus Andersson. The other part of this that is, I think, interesting and a positive for what Rasmus Andersson will be is how are the Golden Knights going to use him? How's Bruce Cassidy going to use him? Because Rasmus Andersson doesn't have the best advanced stats this year, right? His Corsi, his expected goals rates are all bad. But he starts most of his shifts in the defensive end. He's getting the best assignments from the other team's lines and defense pairs, right? He's playing against a higher quality of competition. That's probably going to change, right? I guess it's possible Bruce Cassidy puts him in and he's a first pair defenseman, but that's probably going to change, especially if they go the 1-2-3 route and he's the third pair defenseman, right? He's going to get a lot easier matchups or offensive zone starts, whatever it is, that should make those numbers look better and also make his performance look better than what he's been in Calgary. So that part of it is really intriguing where you go out and trade for the best defenseman or one of the best defensemen from a bad team and say, yeah, come over here. Your role is going to be different. Your role is going to be easier. You're probably going to look a lot better if that's the case. So I think that's a positive, at least for how Rasmus Andersson will look for the Golden Knights. I think there's reason to be optimistic, and I think what we see this year and on the ice, it's going to be good from Rasmus Andersson. I think within this season, we're going to look at it and say that was a very good addition for the Golden Knights for this year. Now, there's more to it than that, and you don't listen to me because I just tell you that Rasmus Andersson is better than Zach Whitecloud. That's not what I'm here to do. There are some questions on this. First off is the value. How much better is Rasmus Andersson than Zach Whitecloud? He's better, but is he a first, a second round pick, and a prospect better? I don't think so. We'll see how good Andersson is when he plays here with the Golden Knights, and we'll see what his role is. But if, let's say, they use him to make the third pairing better, is a first and second round pick the price you're supposed to pay to just make your third pair better? I don't even know if that's the price you pay to make your second pair better, to be honest. And again, maybe Cassidy deploys him differently, but I'd be surprised if he's a first line defenseman when this, or first pair defenseman when this team is fully healthy, right? So I'm not 100% sold on the value. Also, important note here, Calgary is paying 50% or retaining 50% of his salary to help the Golden Knights with the salary cap because they need that to be able to bring Braden McNabb back from long-term IR. So that also goes into this, the value on what this trade is. The Golden Knights had to give up something else to make that happen. Don't know exactly how it went down, but this trade could have very easily been Whitecloud in a first for Andersson, and then the second gets thrown in for 50% retention. Don't know exactly how that was negotiated, but in theory, they paid extra to get that to happen, and it feels like a big overpay. But the value sticks out, not because the Golden Knights are in a position to be holding on to picks, not because you're looking at that and saying, well, who could you draft with those picks, but more importantly, because of what can those picks get you. And by trading away a first-round pick and a second-round pick, the Golden Knights have effectively traded like two of their four most valuable trade assets, right? Like your first and second-round picks over the next few years, those are your most valuable trade assets. Technically, like Pavel Dorofeyev would be a really good trade asset. I don't think they're trading him, but he might be better than all of those. But you traded away two of your best assets to get Rasmus Andersson. Is that worth it? And I think the best example to use right now is Quinn Hughes, a defenseman who is better and younger than Rasmus Andersson, who got traded this season. Big name player, getting traded middle of the season. That is the Golden Knights' specialty. That's how they've built this roster. And unless I am forgetting it, they were like never a serious contender to get Quinn Hughes. Why? They didn't have the assets to get it done. And if you look back, why did they not have the assets to get it done? They traded away first-round picks to get Tomas Hertl. They traded away a first-round pick to get Noah Hannafin. If you want to go the cap space route, you can point to Mitch Marner on that one, right? Like, they made different acquisitions to get Hannafin and Hertl and Marner in recent years. And had they not done that, I know one of the Hertl picks has already been used, but had they not done that, they might have had the assets to go get Quinn Hughes, who's better than Rasmus Andersson, who's better than Hannafin and better than Hertl, and maybe he's younger, but maybe better than Mitch Marner. So the opportunity cost of trading for Andersson, it's not just, oh no, they don't have the first and second round picks. It's about, does this prevent you from getting a better player in the future? Does this prevent you from doing something that would be an even bigger upgrade? Because right now, would you rather have traded for Rasmus Andersson or Quinn Hughes? The answer is Quinn Hughes, but we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. I know that's also looking into the future, and about right now, the team is better, but this is the model the Golden Knights have been using to stay good and stay relevant despite never drafting well, is getting these players to come in. And even if Rasmus Andersson is good, if it prevents you from sort of getting the next great player that's available in a trade, trading for Rasmus Andersson might actually be a bad thing given the way the Golden Knights have to be built. The other part of this that is the calculus that every GM has to sort of put into play is like, was this the right move for this season? And like, can you win the championship or whatever your team's goal is, right? It might be to win the division or just to make the playoffs. That can be your team goal, but the Golden Knights are clearly in a win the Stanley Cup mode. That's the goal. Anything they do is to do that. Does Rasmus Andersson make a difference when it comes to beating the Colorado Avalanche? Because that's what this comes down to. The Golden Knights might not even make it there, but what this comes down to is when you're in the Western Conference Final, almost certainly against Colorado, can you beat them? And is Rasmus Andersson the difference maker in that series? Is he the reason you go from losing that series to winning that series? I don't think he is, but the Golden Knights still should be making this type of trade, right? They're first in the division. They have the second best odds of any Western Conference team to go to the Stanley Cup. They should be in this type of market. Even if you look at it and say, well, Rasmus Andersson doesn't make them as good as the Colorado Avalanche. One great team should not be like, we shouldn't buy anything. So making the trade for Rasmus Andersson, that's what Kelly McCrimmon, that's what this front office should be doing. And they've always done it. But there's no reason in my mind that they shouldn't be going for it, given the position that they're in. And it's, hey, yes, they're going to have to beat like Edmonton in the second round or whatever, and they might lose there. But it's, hey, can we beat the Colorado Avalanche? We need to get as close as possible. Because what you're hoping for is that, maybe Colorado starts playing poorly when we get to the playoffs, or there's some injuries that make Colorado worse, whatever it is that makes Colorado a little bit worse, and then you catch them because Rasmus Andersson is there and you can beat them in a playoff series. So I am all on board going for it. I don't think there's any reason to not be going for it this year. One other part of this, though, is a defenseman what the Golden Knights need? They are 27th in save percentage this year and 22nd in expected goals. I know there were a lot of goals scored in the 7-game win streak, but they haven't actually been a great offensive team this year when it comes to creating chances. And we just saw they got knocked out of the playoffs last year because they stopped scoring, right? Does Andersson help that as much as a center would, or a goalie? I know the goalie position, it's very complicated to trade for one, and how many goalies are you going to carry and all of that, and do you just trust Aiden Hill gets better? Yeah. But like specifically the center position, right? Mitch Marner's still playing center because William Karlsson might be done for the year. Colton Sissons is hurt now, but like, do you even want Colton Sissons in your lineup if you're in a playoff series, right? Like they don't. Tanner Osinski is on this team, right? Like Mitch Marner's playing center. Center still feels like the biggest need for this team. And I know it's possible they can still go make a trade for a center, but they traded away most of their best assets. I don't know how feasible it is they're going to get a good center more than just, hey, can this guy come play fourth line minutes for us, right? So I do question was a defenseman the right move for this team? And specifically, like if we're talking about the goal scoring, Rasmus Andersson, a good chunk of his goals and points have come on the power play. And he's almost certainly not going to be playing on the power play for the Golden Knights unless there are some injuries. But he has never scored 10 goals in a season at 5-on-5 alone. And he's had just one career season where he put up 20 assists at 5-on-5, right? Power play has boosted his offensive numbers throughout his career, and that's not a role he's going to be in for the Golden Knights. So I don't think you look at this and say, oh, they're going to have a big boost to their goal scoring because Rasmus Andersson is here. I just don't think that's the reality. So was this the right position, the right type of player to go after? I think that's a fair question. And then there's the last part on this. And this is the really long-term part, and it doesn't really matter this season. But part of what is fascinating about the Golden Knights is that they have been really good for 9 seasons, right? They missed the playoffs once, but this has effectively been a cup contender for 9 straight years. And they've done it without drafting well. They've done it without drafting players, developing them, and turning them into star players, especially ones that don't get paid a lot of money because they don't get to free agency yet, right? That's incredible that they've done that. And the way they've done it is by trading or signing other teams' best players. They've done this over and over. And you look at Rasmus Andersson, it's another example of that, right? He's a player that's good, one of Calgary's best players who becomes available because he doesn't want to be in Calgary anymore. And the Golden Knights go and trade for him. But is he too old for this model? Rasmus Andersson is 29 years old. He's not too old now. Right now, he's not too old. I'm not sitting here telling you the Golden Knights are too old to win anything now. The whole point of the Golden Knights model has been when players get to their early or mid-30s, they move on from him, right? And we've seen this play out on the smaller end, right? We saw it with Riley Smith, but we saw it with Max Pacioretty. We saw it with Jonathan Marchessault. We've seen it with players over and over. When they get to their mid-30s or early 30s, the Golden Knights are looking for ways to get out of it. And that's why they've traded guys away for nothing, right? Remember the Pacioretty trade? They traded Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan to Carolina for future considerations for nothing. They got nothing for those 2 players. They had to sweeten the deal to get rid of Pacioretty, and they were willing to do that because when players get to the early or mid-30s, they start to decline. They get worse at hockey. And that's what they've done over and over, and then brought in the younger players. And if you go through the star players that the Golden Knights have brought in, Jack Eichel was 25. Mark Stone was 26. Noah Hanifin and Ivan Barbashev were both 27. Mitch Marner was 28, pushing it with Marner. I will say side note on Marner, Dom Lucian actually wrote a good story about this in the summer about player aging curves and highlighted how Mitch Marner is probably going to be an outlier and not fall off very quickly. So I'm not actually that concerned about Marner being 28. But the Golden Knights get Rasmus Andersson, who's 29. And again, he's not too old now. But how many years of Rasmus Andersson are you getting before he becomes the player that, we need to trade this guy. We need to find a way to get out of Rasmus Andersson the way they did with all these other players. Because in theory, he should be replacing somebody you're getting rid of. Braden McNabb is probably the answer in the very near future, who's in their early to mid 30s. But next year, he's going to be 30. And the age curve for most players happens some point between 30 and 33. Right? It's obviously different for each player. We're seeing Mark Stone have this breakout year. Breakout's not the right word, but this monster goal scoring year, right? What happens if Rasmus Andersson declines when he's 31 and you've got to get rid of him then? And you got a season and a half out of good Rasmus Andersson, right? I am fascinated by the way the Golden Knights have done it because it's such a weird way to build a roster that we don't see in sports very often. That works, and it's worked for them. But I just feel like they've gone too old recently. Hurdle was 31 when they brought him in. Anderson's 29, right? And now you throw in there that you look at what the roster is now, right? Between guys like Shea Theodore, William Karlsson, Braden McNabb, Barbashev, Hurdle, Stone, all these guys are 30 or older. Hannafin and Eichel and Anderson are now 29. So like pretty much the entire core of this team, all of the good players, all of the impact players are like 29 or older. Next year, they're all going to be 30 or older with the exception of Marner and Dorofeyev if you think he counts in there. And so how many of those guys are going to avoid the aging curve coming down on them? It does feel like they should have gone younger. It feels like they should have been after the Quinn Hughes type, who's 26, because that's been the model that has worked for them repeatedly. And I just feel like they've gone older recently, and that's going to cause the model to stop working because you're going to get this backlog of, we've been doing this by getting rid of sort of one player every offseason or in season, whatever it's been. And now there's going to be 3 of them next year or 4 of them the following season. And that's going to be really hard to not only get off those contracts, but also replace them with younger players coming in. So that I think, again, right now, perfectly fine. He's 29 years old. You're probably going to get, this season and 2 more that are probably going to be good before there's an aging curve that sets in. But that I think is sort of a fascinating way that Kelly McCrimmon has built the roster and why I'm a little bit concerned why they went with a 29-year-old instead of trying to trade for a 26-year-old. Again, I know you can't control who's available. I mean, it's not like, snap your fingers and there's a 26-year-old defenseman that's available. But I question if this was the right move to actually make. Now, Golden Knights lost to Philly last night, which snapped their 7-game win streak. Both Flyers goals were off of breakaways for Travis Konechny, where the Golden Knights made a terrible pass right at their own offensive blue line that just gave Konechny a breakaway. And he beat Adin Hill both times. It sucks, right? I guess it happens. Actually, that doesn't happen all the time for the Golden Knights where they give up a breakaway off that type of play, but whatever. It happens. The interesting part to me is that the regression for goal scoring happened immediately, right? 7-game win streak. I told you that it was 36 goals on just 20.5 expected goals. The Golden Knights were just massively outscoring their actual high danger chances and scoring chances and all of that. Against Philly, 3.5 expected goals. They scored just 1. Right, the regression came smacking down in 1 game. So big part of that is the power play not scoring. They had 10 minutes and 47 seconds of power play time. They only created 7 high danger chances in that time frame. They scored their only goal there, but it's especially for this power play, not great to have that good of a power play and create less than 1 high danger chance per minute. In a game, you lose 2-1 because you gave away. I mean, hell, one of those was a shorthanded goal by Konechny because you gave away breakaways the other way, right? Offensively at 5-on-5 wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but wasn't great. But that's really a game where you expect the Golden Knights to win just because they got, 7 total power plays in the game. They lost. It ends a 7-game winning streak. I don't think it's that big of a deal at the end of the day that they lost that game. You're not going to win all your games. But we'll see about the goal scoring because I think that's sort of the big takeaway from the 7-game win streak was, they're scoring goals, but is that real? Coming up next, we are going to get into a little bit of NFL, a little bit of the UNLV basketball as they take on Utah State. It's Bischoff's Briefs.
Battle Blast, been serving Las Vegas since June 2012 with the very best in family entertainment. We are proud to provide the best facility, equipment, and service possible. Strap on laser tag vests, step into the 5,600 square foot two-story arena designed to look like a worn-torn city street. An exciting atmosphere filled with exhilarating music, blacklight effects, and fog. Battle Blast also features a viewing deck for those not playing can watch players vest up and catch a view of the action going on in the arena. In between games, check out our arcade and prize center and enjoy tasty treats from our snack bar. Birthday parties, sports teams, group outings, and corporate events. Battle Blast does it all. We want to make your Battle Blast experience so good you'll want to return again and again. Battle Blast is the ultimate destination for family fun and friendly competition.
Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Vegas. Battle Blast is the perfect place to go for your next event, whether it's your kid's birthday party, corporate event, whatever it is. Battle Blast is the place to go. Go for your birthday, get your friends, get your family, see who is best at laser tag at Battle Blast Las Vegas. Plus, they've got arcade games and prizes. There's more than just laser tag at Battle Blast. Check them out, 8125 West Sahara Avenue. Battle Blast Las Vegas, your next stop for fun in Las Vegas. UNLV is at Utah State tonight. 8 p.m. start, 9 p.m. in Utah, by the way. Brutal. Utah State has been excellent this season. They did lose their last game to Grand Canyon over the weekend, but they are 15-2 overall. And because UNLV is playing Utah State, it means I get to do my favorite bit when it comes to Mountain West basketball. How the hell is Utah State so good every year? And UNLV can't even sniff the NCAA tournament. Utah State, the previous 7 seasons, has been to 5 NCAA tournaments. And it would have been 6 if not for COVID, because they won the Mountain West tournament in 2020, and then they canceled the NCAA tournament, right? They've had 4 different coaches in that span, and all 4 of them have taken Utah State to the NCAA tournament. 4 coaches in 7 years, and all of them have been to the NCAA tournament. Utah State is churning through coaches faster than UNLV does, except every single one of those coaches is awesome and goes to the tournament. Meanwhile, everyone that UNLV hires to coach is bad and goes nowhere. I don't understand how Utah State is doing this every single year with new head coaches, and UNLV can't even do it once. I mean, not one time can UNLV hire a good coach to take them to the NCAA tournament. They did hire TJ Otzelberger, who's like one of the best coaches in college basketball, but somehow he didn't take UNLV to the NCAA tournament. It doesn't make any sense how Utah State can keep doing this, especially when you can compare it to like UNLV just not being able to do it, period. I don't get it. I don't understand. And Utah State's almost certainly going back to the NCAA tournament this season. For the game itself, would be the biggest upset UNLV could pull in Mountain West play. Ken Pom gives UNLV a 6% chance to win. 6% has Utah State winning by 17. Not great. It's mainly because UNLV is not really better at anything on a basketball court than Utah State. There's really only 2 things to point to. One, UNLV does block more shots, and UNLV gets to the free throw line more often. They don't make them at a high percentage, but they get there more often. Otherwise, Utah State shoots better from 3, from 2, from free throw line. Utah State turns the ball over less. Utah State forces more turnovers. Utah State holds opponents to a lower field goal percentage. Utah State has a better offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, right? Like, they're better just across the board. UNLV is shooting threes at a decent number recently, right? They're shooting 37% in Mountain West play, which is good, but they're still not a good 3-point shooting team for the whole season. We'll see. Also, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn was named Mountain West Player of the Week for UNLV in 2 games. They won both of them last week. 21.5 points, 5 assists, and 4.5 rebounds. Those were his averages. So here's a fun thing that I think is sort of the key to UNLV this year. Ken Pom tracks, he has like a little like MVP of every single game. It's just based on like box score stats and who the most impactful player was, right? And in the 6 Mountain West games that UNLV's played, right? They're 4-2. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn has been the MVP in 2 of those 6 games, right? The other 2 for UNLV were Tyron Jones and Howie Fleming. But Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn has been the MVP in 2 of those 6 games. In the non-conference, he only got that little MVP designation in one of UNLV's games, and it was the game against La Sierra. Non-Division I team, it shouldn't count, right? I think one of the biggest keys to UNLV being better than expected, right, being good in Mountain West play is Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. And can he be UNLV's best player? And in a lot of cases, can he be the best player on the court? He's a good basketball player. The consistency isn't there, but he is a good basketball player. And if UNLV can get more often than not, you're obviously not going to get it every game, but if they can get more often than not, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn being the best player for UNLV, they're probably going to win more games than expected in Mountain West play. If it's a lot like the non-conference play where he's just there and has some good moments but doesn't really put together whole games, UNLV's probably only winning like 2 or 3 more Mountain West games. But I think he's sort of the key to them being a sort of competent 500 or so Mountain West team, and he's looked good recently. He really has, and so there's reason to believe he might be able to do that. For UNLV football, they got a new wide receiver transfer. Troy Stellato is coming in from Kentucky. So he spent his first 3 years at Clemson and actually had 600 receiving yards over those 3 years, not in 1 year, but over the course of 3. Went to Kentucky, only appeared in 4 games last year, had 1 catch. So you're getting another power conference transfer that's taking the step down, that's probably going to get more playing time and more opportunity. But the UNLV wide receiver room, right? You have Taz Reddix from Oregon State coming in, Amorian Walker from Middle Tennessee State, and now Troy Stellato from Kentucky. It's a wide receiver room where they are replacing their top 4 receivers from last year. So all 3 of these guys are probably going to get significant playing time. That would be the assumption here. Based on where they played at their previous stops, Taz Reddix both played in the slot and out wide for Oregon State. Troy Stellato, not at Kentucky, but at Clemson, had a lot of snaps in the slot and out wide. So you've got some versatility there. Amorian Walker from Middle Tennessee State was almost exclusively out wide for MTSU. But you've got some versatility there. I'm guessing these 3 are going to make up a big portion of the pass catching game for UNLV this season just because they've got to replace basically everybody. The Raiders are looking to interview Clay Kubiak. That's according to Adam Schefter. He's the 49ers offensive coordinator. I'm going to be honest. I didn't know who the 49ers offensive coordinator was. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's the one that gets all the credit there. I also didn't know that Clint Kubiak had a brother named Clay who was also a coordinator in the NFL. That would be kind of an out of nowhere hire, I would think, because again, how much credit does he get for that San Francisco offense, right? It's all Shanahan, right? At least that's how we talk about it. So that would be an odd one. Maybe they just want to learn something from the Shanahan tree or mind, whatever it is. Also, the Titans are reportedly close to hiring Robert Saleh as their head coach. So Tennessee is going to strike here and land a coach, which means the 49ers don't have their defensive coordinator and the Raiders are out here interviewing their offensive coordinator. Also, Chiefs are bringing back Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator. Matt Nagy doesn't have a contract for next year, and he's interviewing for head coaching jobs, but doesn't have one yet. And the Chiefs are still like, yeah, whatever, we're going to go back to Bieniemy, which I think is kind of funny. But here's some numbers for you on Eric Bieniemy. When he was in Kansas City for 6 seasons, the Chiefs were number 1 in EPA per play on offense, right? And I know Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, give them all the credit, but they were number 1 in EPA per play over those 6 seasons. The 3 years that he's been gone, Kansas City's offense is only 10th in EPA per play. So they have taken a step back. Mahomes and Reid are still there. They've taken a step back since Bieniemy left that offense. So the Chiefs' offense is probably back. Also in the NFL hiring, the Dolphins are bringing in Jeff Hafley as their next head coach. And I'm going to be honest. I don't get this one. I don't understand. Jeff Hafley was the defensive coordinator for the Packers for the last 2 seasons. And across those 2 years, they were 9th in defensive EPA, right? They had good defenses the last 2 years under Hafley. But Jeff Hafley, outside of that, was a head coach at Boston College from 2020 to 2023, so recently, and went 22-26. That's it for his head coaching or coordinator experience. That's it. How is that a good hire? I don't get this one, right? Like I honestly don't get this hire of Jeff Hafley. It doesn't feel like a resume that you're actually hiring a head coach with. It just feels bizarre. And I don't get that one for the Dolphins. I am guessing it's not going to be good for the Dolphins, but they're hiring Jeff Hafley. Good for the Dolphins. But this has been Bischoff's Briefs, brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in Vegas. Host your next birthday party at Battle Blast. If you book the party package, you'll get a private party room, dedicated party host, pizza, soda, arcade tokens, and of course, laser tag. You can add on a game for adults if you want to play after your kids are done. It's Battle Blast Las Vegas, located 8125 West Sahara Avenue, your next stop for fun in Las Vegas. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon. There is bonus content up there at Patreon. Going to do some bonus videos, some writing. There's already some stuff there. Patreon.com/technicallycorrect with Tyler Bischoff is the place to go if you want some extra content from me. If you want to support me, I really appreciate it. Need the support to make this all happen. So check that out, patreon.com/technicallycorrect with Tyler Bischoff. Now, Indiana won the national championship, going 16-0, and I have not seen anyone capture how insane this is, right? Like, Indiana was good last year, and they've been good all year and all of that. Number one, it's not like it's a surprise they just did this, but this is a miserable football program. Like, this is one of the worst of all time. And Curt Cignetti walks in, and they win a title in the second year. I don't think anybody can really do justice how unbelievable this is for Indiana. I mean, it is insane that a program could be as bad as Indiana and then immediately be. I mean, they went to the playoffs in Cignetti's first year and then won the title in his second. Every other coach in the country has to hate Curt Cignetti, because what excuse do you have? Indiana won 3 games the year before Cignetti got there. You are not walking into much worse jobs in the country than Indiana. And he won the national championship in year 2. Like, any coach that walks into a new job, if you don't have success by year 2, what's your excuse? Because Curt Cignetti won the national title in Indiana. Most places aren't asking you to win the national title by year 2. They're just asking you to be competent. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable Curt Cignetti has done at Indiana. He's clearly the best coach in the history of college football. And now I get to be a hater, because Curt Cignetti's timeout management in the national championship game was abhorrent. I mean, it's some of the worst timeout management I think you will ever see. Into the first half, Miami's got a 4th down, and they want to kick a 50-yard field goal, and Cignetti just lets them run 35 seconds off the clock. Right? We get down to we're under a minute, and Cignetti's just watching the clock run. Miami calls a timeout. They kick the field goal. They miss it. And so now Indiana gets the ball back, and instead of having a minute to go, we're under 30 seconds. They still have 2 timeouts, and they only needed like 25 yards, maybe 30 yards to kick a field goal. And with the Heisman-winning quarterback who's going first overall and 2 timeouts, they run the ball on first down and let the clock run. They throw it on second down, get to the 50-yard line, and then Cignetti calls a timeout so that they could set up a Hail Mary. Like, it's one of the worst timeout management situations I think you're ever going to see. It was insanely bad from Curt Cignetti. And then in the second half, he burned 2 timeouts on offense before 4th downs. They converted both of them, so I guess you can call those good timeouts. But like, that was just bad. If they needed timeouts late in that game, like, Cignetti just completely butchered that one. Also, here's your hot take and your hater take, right? Fernando Mendoza, not great in the national championship game. Wasn't bad. He was fine, but I would describe him as along for the ride in that national championship game, right? He had the incredible run on 4th down for the touchdown, right? Absolutely an iconic play, right? It's the best play in the history of Indiana football. The most important play in the a great play, tremendous read, and tremendous run by Fernando Mendoza. But how many other really good plays did he make? He had a really good back shoulder completion on 4th down, right? But most of the passing game was RPOs and short, quick passes. I know the Miami defensive line was awesome and took away a lot there, but a lot of that was just quick plays, quick passes that are built into the offense, right? I guess he's got to read a linebacker to know if he should pull it and throw to the slant or not, but like not really complicated stuff, not really impressive stuff there. And this I think is the real question for the Raiders. Is Fernando Mendoza going to be good outside of a perfect situation? Because I think what we saw from Indiana this year at the college football level was a perfect situation, right? Like, best coach in the country, their offensive line, their run game, tremendous. Their receivers were very good this year, right? And then defensively, they were one of the, 3 best defenses in the country for the entirety of the season. Hell, last night, they win the national championship. There was a blocked punt that ended up as a touchdown for Indiana. They won the game by 6 points. Special teams scored 7 of them off of that. So, like, I wonder how good Mendoza is if everything isn't perfect. Because at the college level, we saw Mendoza at Cal. I would say not many people watch Mendoza at Cal. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to have watched Mendoza play college football at Cal. But his numbers weren't anything special. 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions his last season at Cal. That's not great, right? And at no point was that like oh yeah, we got to draft this guy number 1 overall based on what he was at Cal. So the Raiders are going to draft him. We know the offensive line was horrendous last season. We know the running game was non-existent last season. We know the defense was not horrendous, but also not good. All of that's not going to change in one offseason. In reality, all of that's probably not going to change ever. You're probably not going to get all of those things right at the same time. Very rare to do that. And so if Mendoza has to play behind a bad offensive line, how good is he? If Mendoza's defense is bad and he's got to put up a ton of points every game, how well is he able to do that? And I know these are questions for every quarterback, but I feel like the conversation around Mendoza jumped very quickly to this guy's a generational talent. He's the next Joe Burrow. And I don't think he's that. The Raiders should take him. And I'll get more into that as we lead up to the draft. No doubt in my mind, the Raiders should be drafting Fernando Mendoza. But I'm not convinced he's this generational quarterback, the next Joe Burrow, the one that's going to save the franchise and all this. I think he's going to be one of these average quarterbacks that if you get him with a good offensive play caller and in a good situation, right? If you get him with his Kevin O'Connell, his Sean McVay, his Kyle Shanahan, he's going to look really good. But if you don't, he's probably going to look bad. If you don't have a good offensive play caller or the offensive line is bad, he's not going to look as good, right? And like Sam Darnold, I think is a great example. Gets drafted to the Jets and is bad. Ends up with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota and is great. Is with Clint Kubiak in Seattle and is great, right? So you get the right offensive play caller and the right players around him, and now he looks really good when we all know Sam Darnold's not that good because we've seen him play before. I think that's kind of what Mendoza's career looks like, is it's so much dependent on everybody else because I don't think he's this generational talent that covers up a bunch of holes. I think you're going to have to put him in a great scenario. The Raiders are not going to do that in one offseason. I don't think anybody expects that to happen. Can they do that over 2 or 3 off seasons? That's kind of the hope there. And what you're going to need to do if Mendoza is going to be great. Last thing I want to get to on the show today is the Bills firing Sean McDermott. Because I think it's important to point out how good the Bills were under Sean McDermott. 9 seasons, second most wins in the NFL in that stretch, 8 playoff appearances, 4 division titles, 6th most playoff wins in those 9 years under McDermott. But they never won the Super Bowl. Did McDermott deserve to be fired based on what the Bills have done for the last 9 years? No. Not at all, right? Like, I know not winning the Super Bowl is what sticks out there, but like, just look at their playoff losses, 8 playoff losses. 6 of them were by 7 points or less. The last 3 were all exactly 3-point losses. Basically, Buffalo lost a bunch of coin flip games in the playoffs, mostly to Kansas City, to the 1-seed Broncos, right? That's mostly what it was, usually on the road. And I think blaming McDermott for that, they were 4-6 in one possession games in the playoffs, right? It's not like they lost all of them. They were just slightly under 500, kind of what you'd expect a team to be. They just didn't have this magical run where, oh yeah, they won all their one possession games in one season and they won the Super Bowl. Now, that being said, I don't think firing McDermott is necessarily wrong because I don't know that firing McDermott is, hey, look back at what he's done over the last 9 years and does he deserve to be fired? It's more about looking forward And is he the best option to win games for us and win a Super Bowl for us? I think it's perfectly valid to look at it and say, we don't think McDermott's the best guy to do that. This coaching cycle doesn't look great, so I don't know that there's a clear upgrade over Sean McDermott. That's another important part of this. But I don't think it's necessarily wrong to fire McDermott just because his past isn't terrible. What doesn't make a lot of sense to me, though, is the Bills fired McDermott and then promoted their general manager, Brandon Beane, to president. So they didn't fire the guy who put the roster together. They actually gave him a promotion when it's pretty clear the Bills roster has some problems, right? Who's the best receiver on that team? They had one of the worst run defenses in all of football this season. That's not a McDermott issue. Those are not McDermott and Josh Allen issues, right? This is 100% like the GM did not put together a good enough roster. I saw a stat, since they drafted Josh Allen, they've drafted only 2 other Pro Bowlers. And Jesus Christ, everybody ends up getting invited to the Pro Bowl. So like, I don't know. It seems like that's a big mistake for Buffalo, and looking at like, hey, who was the problem and who's likely to be better in the future, it feels like the GM is the one that should have been going there. Now, for the Raiders side of this kind of sucks. This sucks, right? Because you're looking at this and all of a sudden, what? Atlanta's got a new coach. Miami's got a new coach. The Giants have a new coach. Tennessee's got a new coach. Like, jobs are filling up kind of quickly here. And now Baltimore and Buffalo were like, we got a great quarterback. We're going to fire our coach. Because if you're the Raiders, 4 jobs are gone. So that's could be good unless you wanted one of those candidates. Then it's bad. But 4 jobs are gone. But you're still, at best, the 3rd most attractive job, right? The number 1 pick helps a lot. But if I'm a candidate and I get offered Buffalo or Vegas, I'm taking Buffalo. Baltimore or Vegas, I'm taking Baltimore. They already have in place the quarterbacks that have already won the MVP. The quarterbacks that are like, I just need to turn a 3-point playoff loss into a 3-point playoff win, and I'm in the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's the type of team you'd be taking over in Baltimore and Buffalo. So like, the coaching, the search, or I should say the candidate pool doesn't look the greatest right now, and there's 2 jobs that are clearly better than you. Yeah, I'm not loving this. I'm not loving this if you're the Raiders and you're looking out there trying to hire a next head coach that Buffalo decides to say, hey, we got Josh Allen. Who wants to come be our head coach? This has been Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.